What is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here, and welcome to the Nebula Music Podcast. This is a weekly series where I bring on some of music industry's best musicians, best bands, best artists, and really dive into their thought process, getting to know who they are and understanding what keeps them motivated and how they got to where they're at. And I'm very excited because over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be doing a collaboration with Rude Records. Rude Records, it's a very cool label that has a lot of great artists on their roster. And it's my pleasure to sit down and talk to some of them and understand their thought process. Today I have Adam, drummer for Crooked Teeth, joining me on the episode. I really like this one specifically because I got a chance to learn what it's like to play emotionally on the drums. And I'm a drummer too, for those of you guys who are not aware, but I come from a different background of music, and Adam comes from a complete opposite background of music. But I loved diving in, understanding what it was like to play a heavier style of music and then transition into a more pop scene. Very interesting for anyone trying to do that. But I loved his approach to music, how he's very brave, accepts most challenges, and just does what he does best. At the end of the episode, if you enjoy the conversation, please consider subscribing. I do this every week. I bring on the best musicians I can find and talk about their mindset, because honestly, that's what we're all here for. We're all here to learn. We're all here to get inspired and hopefully learn something new that will help us continue pushing our passion forward so that one day we can be at the top of our game as well. But let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in. What is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here again, and I'm very excited to continue my series with Rude Records. Today I have someone that I've actually been very much looking forward to having on the show, because Adam is on the show today. He's a drummer, so I have a feeling that we're actually going to understand each other pretty well, because I'm a drummer and you're a drummer too, Adam. So I'm very excited to have you on the show and talk about your life. So Adam, how are you today, man?
Pretty good, dude. Just chilling out at home with my cats and my wife, and that's about it.
What's up with all of you guys on this record label just being really cool, man? You guys are all just super chill, down to earth, very fun people to talk to, man. I mean, how is it that Rude Records can find such cool people to work with, man? I mean, that's good on their part. You know what I think it is? I think that we aren't like massively successful yet to the point where we're like selling thousands and thousands of tickets and records. So I think we haven't had that ego hit yet. Oh, man.
But if we do good and you check in with us, like in a couple years, I'm sure we'll just be complete assholes.
Oh, man. All right. So a timer. I'm setting up a timer right here on the side. I'm going to say maybe a year or two. And from this day, and I check up on you and you're just a massive, just douchebag. Just not even responding to any messages.
Perfect. Just check in then, and then we'll see if I'm still living in a trailer in Lake Elsinore.
Well, guys, for those of you guys who do not know, I am doing a bit of a collaboration with Rude Records, which is a very, very cool label that I've been aware of for a little while. And I'm excited that I get a chance to interview some of their musicians and musicians that are part of some really cool bands, up and coming bands. And I'm excited to speak with you, Adam Galindo, because you are a drummer, obviously, as I mentioned, but you also play for a band called Crooked Teeth, which I'm excited to learn a little bit more about as we talk about. But I know most of my fans here are not here, oddly enough, to listen to me speak. They're here to listen to you talk about your lifestyle, because if they were here to listen to me, they'd be gone within about a minute. Trust me. So I would much rather them hear about you and learn about your lifestyle. So Adam, man, why don't you go ahead and catch us up? Maybe let us know a little bit about what you've been up to, maybe a little bit about your backstory, a little bit about, music and stuff, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, for sure, man. So for everybody listening who didn't hear it the first 10 times, my name's Adam. And
there'll be a quiz at the end, man.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty much, dude, I've been in the Inland Empire area of Southern California my whole life. I started playing drums around the time I was 11. I was just a major, major, major Slipknot dork. Like, I was just obsessed with anything I could get my hands on. So I went and saw them in 2005 in San Diego. It was them, Shadows Fall, and Lamb of God. And from there, I knew I wanted to start playing, but it was just one of those things where it took a while to convince my parents. And then finally, I would just start listening to K-Rock whenever my parents would pick me up from school. And a whole lot of Fall Out Boy and Angels and Airwaves was going on at that time. And I would just start tapping on basically the armrest of the car, but I could tap to the beat of the song. So my mom was finally just like, let's see what happens. And so she took me to a Sam Ash, and I
Not
sat
Guitar
down.
Center, huh? Not Guitar Center.
Nah, Sam Ash. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but so I sat down on a kit at the time, and the first thing I ever played on a kit was the intro for Sugar We're Going Down, and then I felt real confident, and then I did the drum beat from Wake Me Up When September Ends.
Wow.
And I was just dorking out, like playing the same beat for like a half hour, just being that dickhead in a Sam Ash. And I got a stick and practice pad, and that was it, man. Like, I would just sit there.
You know what's funny
that
you said that is I feel like all of us drummers have been that dickhead at some point. You know, like when we're starting out and we go to either Sam Ash or Guitar Center, pick your choice. We have to be that guy that just sits on the drums. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. When I was 13 and I hit my like major MySpace deathcore phase, when all I listened to was like Job for a Cowboy and Rose Funeral, I would just go into Guitar Center and just full blast play like Knee Deep or Entombment of a Machine, like as loud as I could, to the point where everybody would come and be like, dude, you got to chill.
That's hilarious, man. Well, I mean, so okay, so then you started off playing drums just like most of us do, and you had your stars basically in just listening to music and going to Guitar Center. And so I guess what I'm curious about is now you're playing with a band called Crooked Teeth, and I listened to your music and it sounds really, really good. What I'm curious about for you specifically is, when did you feel like you started sort of honing into your style? Because based on what I hear and what I've heard you play, very different stuff from like Korn and from all that stuff that you first started listening to. So when do you feel, and how do you feel like you've sort of evolved in your drumming since you first got into it, man?
Yeah, so it's all a weird story, man. So I'm gonna go off on a tangent here, like a long backstory. Like, I've basically been in heavier bands like my whole life. Like, I've played from the time I was 15. I joined my first band with my brother called One Choice, and we've been playing for fucking years, dude. Like, just every hardcore band you could think of, we played shows with, and I've been lucky to do that and traveled to Mexico a couple times with that. Small West Coast runs, nothing crazy, but that was still more metal playing. And then in 2014, my brother actually got a text from one of his friends, a good friend of his, in a band called Strife, which is a bigger hardcore band based out of the Los Angeles area. And I went, and I only had about a week to learn. They were one of my favorite bands at the time. So, well, they still are, but I pretty much knew most of their back catalog, but they threw a bunch of deep cuts at me, told me to learn it. I tried out and I got the gig, and I've been lucky to have been playing with them. But I would say, as far as honing my sound in, that helped from a professional standpoint, as far as playing live and being confident, because I went from playing in front of 20 kids at a skate shop to playing in front of a sold out show at the Ukrainian Cultural Center in Los Angeles within the span of a week. Like, it was a big shock, but because that's the thing I usually will take credit for as far as my ability goes, is playing live and feeling confident there.
Yeah.
I would say my sound, as far as making the drastic change from being like a heavy metal hardcore drummer, was when I first started playing with Crooked Teeth. We played our second show ever at Chain Reaction in Anaheim. It was with As It Is and Forever Came Calling. It was a really cool show. But our producer, Matt, came up to me as I was packing down, and he played, and I've told this story a million times, but he's walked up to me and was like, "Hey, dude, like, that was cool, but have you ever played to a metronome?" I was just like, "Nah, like, I've never played to one." And then he looked at me and was just like, "All right, yeah, you should probably start doing that. And then you should get some in-ears, and then you need to start doing that live too, because you were a little all over the place." And I was like, "Holy shit, like, I've never met you before, like, who are you?" And then he finally told me, he was like, "Yeah, like, I helped Tyson write the EP." I was like, "Oh shit, like, all right." But from that point on, it was more so like, okay, I'm not as professional as I think.
Yeah.
So that was like a big, not a slap in the face, but like a wake up call. Because I had been playing for 10 years already, pretty much. And
damn, dude.
At that point, I was just like, fuck, like, I'd never played to a metronome ever. So I just had to learn, like, on the spot. pretty much, you know? And with that,
how hard was that, by the way? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious,
No, you're
like,
good.
as a drummer, and obviously I think a lot of my listeners are drummers too, but there are some that are not. And obviously by that, I mean, I think most musicians play with metronomes at this point, but I think drummers specifically, it's like part of our repertoire, you know, we have to play with clicks. How hard was that to, like, you know, go from not playing metronome to basically just playing metronome professionally? Because that took me a lifetime to learn, dude, and you had to basically learn it on the spot. I mean, like, holy shit, man.
Yeah, it was weird for the first couple practices. So right after that show, we had a major lineup change because Tyson was on guitar and singing. And then after that, we decided it might be better for him to focus on bass and singing because it was less work, if that makes sense. Not like playing a bass is, you know, easier by any means in its own right than guitar. But we just decided to make that change. So we had a couple practices after that show. And Matt came and sat in with all the tempos for the songs and just put them into the PA as loud as he could. And he was like, you're going to play to these songs like as hard as you can and to the tempo. He's like, if you fall off the tempo at any point, like I'm starting it over. So those two practices in itself are what really whipped my ass pretty much to the point where I was like, okay, I need to get better at this. So to answer your question, it was it wasn't the absolute worst thing in the world, but it was just more so embarrassing those first two practices. Like, fuck, this is my one job and I can't even do it right.
Yeah. I mean, you know what's crazy is, and I'm curious about this because I know us drummers, or let's just be honest, I think a lot of us musicians are very stubborn in very specific ways, and it's perfectly fine because I think we're sort of creating things as we go along, and we're very passionate about what we do and what we create. And I know that the metronome thing, being able to actually play to time, is something that is either loved by musicians when they learn it, or primarily drummers, or if you hear someone, you know, giving you a critique that, you know, you got to learn how to play with a metronome. A lot of other drummers that I've met and I've talked to and mentored along the way too, decide that, say, fuck it, I don't want to learn how to do that. And I go the other way, and they don't do it. What I'm curious about you is, why did you choose to, quote unquote, get better with it? You know what I mean? Because obviously if you've been playing for 10 years, you obviously have some skill. You obviously know to some degree what you were doing. I mean, I think I did too before I started playing with the click. What was your mindset that helped you decide that, all right, I got to get better for my sake, if that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. It was, like I said, that first wake up call of just like being told flat out, like, you're not on time. Like, you sound cool, like you do good fills, whatever. I mean, you go over the top, cool, but you're not on time. And to me, I was just like, fuck, like, what is he talking about? And then I go back and listen to audio of it, and it's clearly bouncing all over the place. And in a hardcore scene, which like I said, I grew up in and played in my whole life pretty much, like, it just doesn't matter. It's all emotion based, and 90% of the music I grew up with wasn't even recorded to a fucking click track. So
really,
it was one of those things where it was like, okay, what about like my real drumming heroes, like the Joey Jordisons on the later recordings for Slipknot and Aaron Gillespie? It's like, if you listen to those records, they for sure played to a click. So I basically was like, all right, like, if I really want to be a professional career drummer, then that's just something that comes with the territory. Because if I go into a major studio to record for anybody, like if I get some fill-in work or session work, then I'm going to need to know how to do it. Otherwise, they're not even going to let me sit down on the kit. They're just going to tell me to get the fuck out of there, you know, like. And then, like, I auditioned to fill in for another gig for the summer because our guitar player is going to be on Warped Tour. I auditioned to fill in for a gig for this band called Power Flow. And it didn't necessarily work out, but when I got in there, they had a sample pad and backing tracks, and they were just like, all right, like, you have monitors, right? Like, you're good to go. You can play to a click. And if this was 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even been able to try out. They would have just been like, no, like, sorry, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I'm extremely grateful that I was forced to buckle down and do it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. That's what honestly makes you a better musician is when those, when those moments come and you're able to sort of discern what's, I don't want to say what's wrong with you, but you know what I mean? Like what you could improve on is a better way to say it. And then be able to actually take action on that and practice and get better with the metronome. I think it's very important for many drummers to understand. And you know what I'm curious about? I'm not too familiar with the hardcore scene. I'll be honest with you. I think I grew up on different styles of music, which is totally fine. I think a lot of us do grow up on different facets of the industry, but I will be honest, like the hardcore scene has been something that I've always been fascinated about. And I'm curious, like you mentioned a little earlier that music in general tends to be pretty emotional. And what do you mean by that? I was just curious, like, what do you mean by when you said like the music is very emotional? And I mean that honestly, because I think all music, in some retrospect, it has something to do with emotion, right? But when you say like hardcore music, like what kind of emotions are involved? And obviously I can sit here and assume which emotions are involved, but I would much rather hear it from you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally, man. So as far as the hardcore scene goes, it's like this. So it's, whenever I describe hardcore to anybody, it's a mix of punk and metal as far as the sound goes. But the thing with hardcore is it's a lot of kids that didn't necessarily fit in with punk or metal, because there's two very distinct crowds when you think of it. Like when you think of punk kids, you think of leather jackets and fucking mohawks, and it's cool. And then when you think of metalheads, you think of dudes in parking lots with fucking ripped off sleeves and dirty hair, but they're their own scenes. Like they are what they are. Exactly. And hardcore is more so, when I say it's about the emotion, it's one of those things where people in hardcore, it's kind of a running joke that a lot of them don't really know how to play their instruments. But I feel that it's one of the only genres where somebody who has no musical background can say, I'm hurting inside and I'm angry at this, or I want to speak about this. Let me grab a microphone and a couple friends and basically get out what I have inside of me that I need to get out. It's not so much emo, like emotional emo in the sense of like, oh, I just got broken up with, my life sucks. It's more so like, I feel compelled about this and I need to get it off my chest. And that's what really drew me into it, being a 14-year-old kid that thought his fucking whole world was out to get him for no reason.
We all did, man.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and there's so many different stances with it too, like straight edge bands and vegan bands and feminist hardcore bands. It's all walks of life. And it's a fucking beautiful thing, man, for anybody who hasn't listened to it. I mean, it's at least worth a shot to at least look up a video of a hardcore show where you see just 16-year-old kids throwing themselves off a stage, hoping that somebody's going to catch them just to get a certain emotion out of them. It's a weird, really cool thing, you know?
Yeah. You ever miss it? You ever miss play? Or are you still heavily involved in the scene?
Oh yeah. I got my foot in there 100%, no matter what. That's a part of my life that I can't give up, basically. It's like, and this one too, like, I'm sure you're aware of Fall Out Boy. Like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Andy Hurley, their drummer, he plays in multiple hardcore bands still. He plays in a band called Sect, which is really good. A vegan straight edge band. He plays in a band called Race Trader. They've been around since the 90s. Very good political band. He also used to play for one of my favorite bands of all time, Earth Crisis. It's just fucking, I've played multiple shows with Sect, actually. Strife, the other band that I said I played for, another older band from the 90s, actually, has played a couple fests with Sect. So I've been like in the same room with Andy, but I'm too much of like a wuss to be like, yo, dude, like you like literally taught me how to play drums. I'll punish him one day, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, you will, man. Well, you know what? I'm curious. As a drummer myself, right? So that you know a little bit more about me, I actually come more from an Afro-Cuban background, being Hispanic and all. I grew up in South LA. I think you grew up in the Inland Empire in California. So we're both from the same state. But I grew up with a very Afro-Cuban influenced family. I'm curious, for drummers' sake, right? So everyone else who's not a drummer, I apologize. I'm just kind of geeking out, but hey, you're here, you're listening to the show, so hopefully you'll be interested a little bit. Like, how do you approach hardcore music as a drummer? And obviously, like you're saying that it has a lot to do with, anyone that has a sort of pain or something that they want to express. It sort of allows everyone to do that. As a drummer, how do you approach like playing a beat? And obviously, like I said, I can sit here and I can speculate. I can just kind of throw random terms that I know, but I don't want to do that. I would much rather hear from you. You know what I mean? Like, how did you approach drumming for hardcore, and like how does one go into that and be able to maximize their skills doing hardcore, if that makes sense? I'm not sure if I'm asking too broad of a question, but I'm just curious like what you think about that.
No, you're good. I totally get it, dude. I've made the joke plenty of times that like I used to be a really good drummer before I started playing in hardcore bands. Like obviously it's a joke, but honestly the main priority with hardcore drumming is like, I don't really know how to describe it. It's like, in a way, a lot of drummers in hardcore are sort of just there. Like the focus is on the front man a lot of the time. So for the most part, in a hardcore band, I mean, at least from my perspective, the main thing is that you just beat the fuck out of the drums. Like that's my thing, is like every show I play, even with Crooked Teeth, it's just you hit as hard as you can. There's a lot of fast shit. It's kind of like a punk beat mainly,
Yeah.
And then like the breakdowns, obviously, when people just, fucking start punching each other in the face and shit. Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing I would say about being in a hardcore band, is just really just being a solid backbone, dude. Like trying to keep the tempos on point and just making sure you're felt, like making sure that you just lay into those things,
I love that. I love that you said that, making sure that you're felt. And the reason why I bring that up, and obviously I'm no expert in hardcore at all, and so you can school me as much as you want throughout this whole entire interview. I have no problem with that because I'm always learning, dude. But that's one thing. So I primarily play in a lot of pop stuff, and which I enjoy and I love it, and I love singer-songwriter stuff. But as a drummer, I have seen how very easy it is for, in the industry in general, quote unquote, for us as drummers to sort of be not necessarily put in the back, like where we're forgotten, but it's more like, we're obviously there to keep the time, which I'm a huge fan of and I agree with. And anyone who's listened to this understands that I believe that the drummer needs to do their job. But I do believe that sometimes we do lose the ability to emote in what we play. Do you feel like, in your experience, crossing genres, do you feel like you lose sort of that ability? And again, I'm just sort of asking this just at the top of my head because I'm curious, like transferring over from like hardcore to say something like Crooked Teeth, or maybe even other styles that you've seen. Do you feel like as a drummer, do you lose that ability to emote as you continuously sort of change styles and go more towards a more commercial route, if that makes sense?
No, I totally get that. No, honestly, dude, not at all. To me, it's on sort of a person-to-person basis. There's plenty of soft bands that you see where the drummer spazzes out. I mean, obviously the biggest example I could probably think of, like, look at Travis Barker. Like,
that dude, great example.
He just goes ape shit whenever he plays, and Blink-182 is one of the softest radio rock bands. They're great. Like, I
they're
love
fantastic.
Blink-182. Yeah. But it's like that, and like Paramore, like Zach Farrow would just fucking demolish his drum set. Like he would just hit everything as hard as he could. I don't think there's so much me losing emotion when I'm playing. It is controlling it better. So those first shows with Crooked Teeth, where I was letting everything get to me, that adrenaline, and I'm going to wail on this snare drum as hard as I can right now, I would start to lose the tempo. But now that I'm in a genre where I know I have to focus on it more, it allows me to control my emotions better. And so that way, when a certain part in like a chorus hits or whatever, the metronome it sets you free in a little bit, where you're just like, all right, like you're locked in, and then you could really just feel it and lay into it,
Yeah. Do you feel like that's better, or not better, but do you feel like that actually helps you grow as a musician? And by that, I mean, what you said, and I loved it. I absolutely love that you said that you can control better. And I love that because I think, and I say this because I've talked to some people about it. A lot of people have a fear of sort of losing that control, I don't mean to say it as selling out, and it's not anything like that, but that's the closest thing I can come up at the top of my head. But the ability to sort of lose that freedom of creativity, a lot of people are afraid of sort of going that more professional, more kind of controlled route. But what I love about what you're saying is that it seems like you're saying that having sort of that metronome, allowing yourself to sort of grow more professionally and understanding having balance allows you overall to have way more creative control. Is that sort of like what I'm getting from you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, 100%. It made me feel more confident that I was on time properly, and I was able to just feel really locked in and just like go for it live. Like that's been one of the funner parts of playing live now is I know I'm locked in on the tempo and I'm feeling it that much more, and it makes me excited knowing that I'm doing something right. So I enjoy my playing more, and that's expressed with, how hard I hit and how much my body moves when I play. It's just all out there. And yeah, I think pretty much, man.
I love it, man. I love that you're able to sort of learn from what you've done before and expand on that, because I think that's something that's important. And I love picking your brain about this, because it's absolutely necessary for any musician trying to grow. I know that you guys are trying to grow your fan base and grow your band and go as far as you can possibly go with like Crooked Teeth and other bands that you're playing. And so I'm glad that that's your mindset, that you're approaching this music with that sort of professional balance. And just out of curiosity, I asked this to a lot of people. Like I asked this question to everyone that I talked to just to see what they think. But I'm curious, like, do you feel like that's something, being able to balance that emotional, like being able to balance when you actually play hard, when you don't, do you feel like that's something that sort of comes with experience, or do you feel like that's a choice that you obviously have to make one day as a musician to either be more professional or not be as professional, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's kind of 50-50, man. Like, I think it comes with the experience of playing shows, and then some nights you're just laying it all out there, and then you're realizing like, damn, that sounds kind of sloppy.
Yeah.
And then you have to make the choice to go, okay, am I going to go all out here because it feels good and make the music sacrifice, or am I just going to tone it down a little bit and make the performance that much better for everyone? Like that was the thing I had to look at when joining Crooked Teeth. And that was honestly, Crooked Teeth is probably one of the best things to happen to my playing, is I had to think about, it's not just about me being on stage and people going, fuck, that dude's a good drummer. It's about, holy shit, like this band sounds good, and that's the main thing that drummers need to keep in mind. I think like now that I'm getting older is like, you're just basically there to make the band sound as good as possible, because you can clearly hear when a band has a bad drummer.
Yep.
Like I'm going to be a stickler about it. Like if a band has a bad drummer, they'll usually sound like shit live. Like, and I know that sounds really rude, but it's kind of the truth. Like your band is only as good as your drummer.
It is. I mean, it's true. I mean, I completely agree 100%. You can have, and obviously, look, having a bad musician in general always takes away from the overall effect that a band can have on an audience. But absolutely, I think the drums are the most notable thing. I think that's why it's important. They're the loudest thing. They're the more solid thing. And so when a drummer isn't on it, it's very easy for the audience to tell that it's not that great. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the drummer is the most intricate part, for the music to actually sound solid. And I love that you're kind of nailing that in the coffin, because I want that message spread to almost every drummer that, passes along in this conversation, to understand that we are that core of the band. You know what I mean? Like without us, there is no meat and bones. In my opinion, there's no meat to the music. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. I mean, like I said, your band's only as good as your drummer, and it's all about that backbone, man. Like that's the drummer's job, is to just be that backbone. I mean, yeah, you could throw in your fills and be as flashy as you want sometimes, but if you don't have a solid backbeat, then it doesn't really do too much good, It's
Absolutely.
all flash and no substance, which is something that I learned over time. Like when I started playing shows at 15, it was literally just how many fucking rolls can I fit in within this time span, or how much faster can I play this part than we recorded it.
Well, I mean, that's what makes it fun, man. That's what makes it fun for us drummers. Does that mean that your band is good then? Does that mean that Crooked Teeth is very good live because you're a pretty good drummer? Is that what you're saying?
You know, everybody cracks on me. Like, everybody jokes, like, oh, dude, you could hit so much harder. Like, you could be so much better. But then I'll just crack back at them like, fuck you. Like, I know I'm the best musician in the band. Like, whatever.
That's hilarious, man. Well, you know what? Talk to me a little bit about Crooked Teeth, since we're kind of mentioning them a little bit. I want to know a little bit more about, like, Crooked Teeth. Obviously, you mentioned to me how that sort of came to be. How is it like being with this band? And, like, while you're telling me about your band, I'm curious, like, what your goal is with the band, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, dude. So pretty much Crooked Teeth, I'm going to give a little backstory. It happened in 2016. Tyson was in a band called Second to Last, and they were around for quite a while. They were doing their thing. And he went to our guitar player, Adam, who's been my best friend since high school. And he had him print up some shirts, like a Bernie Sanders Green Day mashup. It's pretty cool. It's like it's the I'm not growing up, I'm just burning out one, and it's Bernie Sanders. And so it's good. But yeah, he had Adam print those, and he was like, yeah, like, I'm starting this band. Like, let me know what you think about these songs, or if you'd be interested to play. So he showed them to Adam, and Adam was like, oh, these are cool. Like, I'm definitely down to do it. And then Adam, being, like I said, my best friend, kind of looking out for me, he was like, well, do you need a drummer? And Tyson was like, well, I have somebody online, basically, and it was supposed to be the drummer for Such Gold, who is a fucking animal. Dude played for Trash Talk, like, infinitely better drummer than I am, for sure. Wow. Like, there's no denying it. So I was just like, you know what? Like, fuck it, do your thing. Like, there's no shot against that guy. And the job fell through for him, though. He couldn't do it. I believe he had other commitments. So Adam and I drove up to San Francisco on a Friday night, which is like an 8-hour drive for us.
Oh, damn.
We tried out.
You're farther south, yeah.
Damn. Oh, yeah. So we tried out, and then that was it. Like, the three of us have been the core since the beginning. It was really Tyson's baby. But as far as our goals go, man, like, fucking I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, we're going to be the biggest band on earth. But the goal is to take this band as far as it can go. Like, we feel extremely confident with our music and our live show and merchandise and who we are as people. We really want to test the waters and see just how far we can take our band. And I feel like a lot of bands are afraid. They're kind of in that DIY scene where it's like, well, you can get to about 1,000 cap at your biggest, but that's it. And a lot of bands are afraid to reach for that bigger ceiling.
Why do you think that is, by the way?
It's like I said, I think it's that DIY cred of just like, nah, you're fucking selling out if you make a sound, a change in your sound that applies to a wider audience. So basically, like, if you make a more pop change or a more R&B based change, or basically go more mainstream, then you're a fucking sellout and you don't deserve to be popular. Like, we're not like this big band where everybody's going to go, we're selling out. But as I said, we're really trying to just go for it and see what happens, man. Like, why not? You know, I mean, there's no reason not to push for that.
Yeah.
So,
and you know what? I guess I'm just curious by that, because I think all of us musicians, that we all come from specific backgrounds. And I think almost anyone that's creative has gone through that phase where they are afraid, or at least they are taught to be afraid of quote unquote selling out. And obviously that's a conversation for another time, obviously. And me playing in the pop world, I actually love pop. You know, I love pop music and I love being involved with that. But I'm curious what you think, why it's such a big deal for the DIY scene to not sell out. And obviously I think you were explaining it a little bit, but like, why would it be bad to expand your message to the rest of the world, or at least a larger audience, if that makes sense? You get what I'm asking? Like, it seems odd to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it is more so a lot of these kids get so attached. I'm not speaking derogatorily, like, oh, all these fucking kids.
Right.
Because I've been there too when bands have just gotten popular and I'm like, well, fuck you. I heard about them first. But
we're all like that, man. I do that like every week, man.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where I think these kids get so attached, and then all of a sudden this massive audience hears it and they go, hold on, like, this is my band. Like, they are not your band. This is my band. When the whole purpose of music is to just reach that audience. Like, make people happy, man. Fuck.
Yeah. And so do you feel like evolution, like the evolution of your music as a band or as an artist or even as a drummer, is that necessary? Like, do you feel like in order to expand your message to, you know, the masses or a bigger audience, you constantly need to be sort of evolving and sort of improving your sound? Is that absolutely necessary in your opinion? Or do you feel like you can still be that same band that you started out with, obviously still having those goals in mind, but you can still be that same band you started with the same sound and still make it, if that makes sense?
You know, man, some bands can do it. Like, I mean, for example, like, I know this is a weird one, but like Circus Survive has obviously gone through some changes in their sound, but for the most part, they're still like this kind of proggy, weird band with a really high pitched singer, and they're selling out 3,000 to 4,000 cap rooms, which by all means is extremely successful.
Yeah.
And they've still been doing it. So I think it's really on a case-to-case basis because if you think about these metal bands, like look at Slipknot, like they obviously incorporated more clean singing as they've gone along.
Right.
But all the deep cuts off the album are still just straight up fucking, they're just metal songs. Like they're reaching number one on billboards. And it's just a real case-for-case thing because I really don't think that Paramore could be packing out arenas if they would have just stood with the Riot sound. Now that they've done After Laughter, they're taking out, who is it? Is it Portugal the Man or Foster the People that they're taking out? It's one of them, but they're taking them out on an arena tour this summer. Like, that's a big deal, and I really don't think they could have done that if they stood with Riot. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think, like I said, it's a case for case, dude. Like, a lot of these hardcore bands will peak at a certain size because they won't change their sound. And then there's a lot of other bands that will change their sound. They'll make it more poppy, and then more people will be into it. Either that or it just terribly backfires on you and everybody doesn't like it.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad that you bring that up because I personally believe that, you know, great example with Paramore, by the way. I think there's a lot of bands that sort of create a splash, but if they refuse to change, it's very hard for you to sort of reach that next level where you're sort of become more legendary, more like able to sell out, you know, an arena tour, which is arguably, I mean, let's be honest, I think we all want to play an arena at some point in our life.
Of course.
I don't think there's any drummer out there that does not imagine themselves playing to 30,000 people on a giant, you know, face of like football stadium. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Like I always joke about them. Like my plans, like I'm designing the stage, like we got this arena, I'm doing a drum riser with stairs and I'm going to have a double bass kit. Like, fuck you guys. Like everybody thinks of it at some point.
You got the fire going on behind you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that's part of it. And that's part of the dream. And I think it's an important decision to make at some point because my opinion primarily is that either way is fine for me. I think if you want to stick to what you know is right for you in terms of your music's message and the way it needs to sound, go for it. I'm a huge advocate for being who you want to be. But I think along those lines, what I guess the second step would be is understanding how far you want to go, right? I mean, because there's many people that don't need the fame. They don't want the arenas. Deep down inside, they don't care about it. But there's some of us that do want to hopefully one day play that arena, and you have to be able to make those choices whether or not you like it. And I think that also applies to us as musicians. If I can expand it a little bit further, as a drummer, I think we love what we start off playing, whether it's with the fills, whether it's hardcore, whether it's me with Afro-Cuban. But at some point, we have to decide how far are we willing to go, and what do I need to learn to get to that point. And you gave a great example with like diving in with the metronome and stuff like that. And so like, I'm curious as a drummer, do you feel like we constantly have to be making those choices to constantly improve and evolve our drumming? Or can we ever get to a point where we're good for a while, if that makes sense?
You know, man, it's one of those things. I'm 50-50 on it because for the most part,
and I love that we can have that like 50-50 conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Like, for example, like my style is my style. Like, I'm not all of a sudden going to change the way that I do all my little nuances, like the random double snare hits or like the actual bass drum beats. Like, they're all pretty similar, but I feel that's my style and the way that I do fills. But there's also that, okay, I do want to play an arena one day, so it doesn't make sense for me to play a fucking double bass fill on this pop song that we wrote.
Right.
It's one of those things you have to manage to balance it out properly. Like my style, I consider myself more of like a Bonham or an Aaron Gillespie. It's all fill based. Just have fun live, be that backbone, make sure everybody hears you, and just be cool to watch, you know?
Absolutely.
And then there's other drummer styles where they're just, I need to chop it up as much as possible. And like I said, dude, it's just balancing them out back and forth, you know?
I love it. I love it, man. And so alongside with your band, so along with Crooked Teeth, you obviously want to take it as far as you want to go, right? You want to take it as far as you guys can possibly go. What are your like immediate plans with the band right now? Because I know you guys have I believe you guys have some new music out or something coming out very soon. So like, I'm curious if you can walk me through a little bit about like some of the steps that you guys are taking to sort of take it to that next step, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course, dude. We just signed to Rude in the beginning of the year, and it's been fucking awesome already.
Congratulations, by the way. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you very much. Like, I feel like it's kind of a cliche thing. Like, you sign to a label and just feel like, oh, it's fucking great. Like, they're awesome, never better. But it's one of those things where it's really cool for us to see that the work we've put in over the past 2 years is doing something. It's picking up momentum. So with that being said, we just went in and recorded a new EP, 5 songs. We're not re-releasing another old song like we did on the last EP. That being said, that will come out sometime in the fall, I believe. But really excited about, we just released a music video for our song Crawl. It features, not the video, the song features Bonnie from Stand Atlantic, another great band on Rude that are going to do amazing things. And I'm really happy with that. So we got that song out now. But the release date, I believe, is May 11th, I believe. We're re-releasing our EP called Pastel. And we put that out last year by ourselves.
Nice.
Yeah, it's 3 songs, but it was the first real time where we sat down and wrote together and went, okay, like, how are we going to do this as a band? What are we going to do as far as our sound? And I love those songs with all my heart. So we're re-releasing that. Like, we're actually going to be able to push it with the help of Rude, which we're really, really excited about. So that being said, we are going to be shooting a music video or two music videos for a couple songs off the new EP that we just recorded.
Nice. And
then we are going to do a small run with Belmont from Chicago. We'll be doing 3 dates with them in May. May 25th, 26th, and 27th. We'll be playing in Cupertino, Fresno, and Anaheim at Chain Reaction. And then we are also going to be playing June 1st in Phoenix with Sundressed, really good friends of ours from Arizona. They're a great band. And I always forget the other bands, but our good, our good friend Kaylin from Tiny Stills is also going to be on that show. So while we're out there, we'll shoot another music video. And then from there, we kind of have a little bit of downtime in the summer. Adam guitar techs for This Wildlife,
nice.
A really great acoustic band that is also dropping a new album soon. But he's going to be on Warped Tour all summer pretty much. So not like it's ruining plans, but it's going to be nice to just take a second and analyze what we're going to do and let some steam build up for the new EP to drop, because we are extremely, extremely excited about the new EP that we just recorded.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. And I think you should absolutely be very excited. I'm curious, man, as a drummer, right? How do you approach songwriting, especially with 2 other dudes that you're in a band with? How do you specifically approach the songwriting with the band? I'm just curious, like, your methods.
Yeah, so for the most part, Tyson will come with something. He'll come with a chorus or a hook or a melody or a riff. And we'll just sit there in our practice space and we'll just start jamming out to it. Like, I'll just start playing something, or we'll feel it out from there. And then I'll try my hardest, because I I can't really come up with melodies. I'm not a melodic. I'm not a melody dude. I'm just not. Like, I work mainly on structure, if that makes sense. So like, if Tyson comes up with something, I'll go, okay, like we should try and come up with a part like this for this next part. So we'll do that. And then there's also instances where I've mentioned him before, but our producer Matt, who's pretty much like the fourth member of the band at this point, he will, because he frequently writes. Like, it's just his thing. He's an amazing songwriter. And every now and then he'll just message us songs like, okay, what do you think of this? Like, feel free to work and change it up. Like, let me know what you think of it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about it. As far as drumming goes, when we first started, I was just literally throwing in fills once again, like literally just whatever I could over the top. But once I got into the studio with Matt, it was like, okay, like let's tone it down and figure out how to make the song tasteful as far as your drum parts go. But then also have those parts where people can go, holy shit, like this guy's not just a backbone, he's also a really solid drummer.
Yeah.
So that's the approach I've been taking since recording. Like, I think that's kind of not so much evident, like I'm just shredding all over the place on Crawl, but as far as Crawl goes, I feel like there's some really tasteful drum parts.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I love that you are sort of spreading your wings when it comes to actual like songwriting, because it's a very difficult thing to do, for me at least. And I think for a lot of other drummers too, because we're so used to being around, you know, rhythmic stuff. Not saying that we don't know anything. In fact, I feel like us as drummers, we kind of know a lot because we have to be aware of everything that's going on in a band. But that being said, my mind is a very busy place. And so it can be very hard for me to actually focus on melody lines. But I love that you are focusing on the structure of the song and bringing your own like tasteful things to it. Because I'm sure that's what makes the music that much more complete, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like, I think that you can have all the catchy hooks and melodies in the world, but if you throw them into a pile and just go, okay, this is a song, then it's going to sound like shit. It's not going to mesh. You have to have that, not cookie cutter formula, but you need to have, like I said, that structure where it's like, okay, they know how to put all these parts together and make them blend so that it's pleasurable to my ear.
Absolutely, man. Well, I loved learning more about like your actual drumming style, man, and understanding how you basically transition from a very like hard, heavy style to more like Crooked Teeth, where you guys are actually trying to go out there and make a difference in that whole scene. And I loved it because, you know, I interview musicians from all over the world and from different facets of the industry, different levels. I love seeing and talking with people that are, you know, quote unquote already there, some that are kind of halfway there, some that are on their way, you know, and I love understanding the different mindsets. But one of the things that you guys all have in common is that you guys are all willing to learn and you guys are all putting the work in. And I can't stress that enough with any other drummer or other musician or artist that's trying to sort of push their career forward, or at least figure out what to do or how to do things, is that hard work and being in it, you know, and understanding what you have to do and constantly being evolving is really like one of the keys, or some of the keys, to actually being able to make it. And I'm excited that I got a chance to talk to you and understand your process and understand Crooked Teeth's process. Even in your infancy stage, I can already tell you guys have the mindset to actually make it there. So I commend you, man. Honestly, congratulations for everything you guys have been doing. It's great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, dude. It's really nice to hear that, man. I mean, it's been constant work over the past 2 years, whether it's Tyson trying to book a show or just me and Adam trying not to fucking stab each other in the van. Like, it's all work. Like, no matter what way you slice it, being in a band or being a musician is just, it's fucking work, dude. And some people are cut out for it and some aren't. And you kind of have to decide for yourself, like, how far you're willing to go, how much work you're putting And
Exactly. Decide for yourself, man. That's the key. That's like in my opinion, at least, that's what helped me is I had to decide very early on, like, is this what I want? And am I willing to beat everybody else at what I'm doing? Because if I'm not willing to go that extra mile to win, then what am I doing? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not sure if that's too much of a cutthroat mentality for some people, but I think that's really what separates a good, successful band, from other people. That like we talked about, that willingness to evolve, understanding what choices you need to make, and asking yourself and deciding for yourself, how far are we willing to go? And then do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even think it's cutthroat, man. It's like, the bottom line is, like, you have to look out for yourself. Like,
yep.
If it's between you, like, if you got a paying gig and it's between you and somebody else, like, you better believe that you're going to hope that you get that gig. You're going to try your hardest to make sure that the other person doesn't get it. It's not even a competitive, like, oh, fuck you, I'm better sort of thing. It's like, I'm looking out for myself here because that's what I have to do as a career musician, And
there's nothing wrong with that. That's in fact what you have to do in order to actually make it. And so I'm glad that that's what you guys are focusing on, man. It's great. And I am confident that all your efforts are actually gonna, they're gonna come to fruition, because I love it when people are doing cool things, when they believe in themselves and they're taking choices to move their career forward. And I think you guys are the prime example of that. And so, like I said, I commend you and I'm happy for you guys, man.
Thanks, man. I hope it pays off, because, I really don't like these dudes. I'm kind of just stuck in a fucking van with them until it pays off. So hopefully it does.
I love it, man. I love it, man. Well, to finish things off, one thing I love to do at the end of every episode, which, again, we've talked about a lot of great things, and there's nothing I couldn't have said what you've said in the show already any better myself. But for some of the people that are listening out there, they're all in different stages of their careers, some a little bit farther than others, but we're all trying to push our career forward. For you, man, as a drummer, to other drummers or other bands, what would you suggest for them to be sort of focusing on right now, like some steps that they can actually take today or tomorrow, or something that they should be focusing on to actually move their career forward, to either signing with a label like Root Records, or actually like writing some better songs, or actually finding a better band to be a part of? Whatever the reason may be, or whatever the step is, what would you suggest someone listening to you and about your career, what would you suggest for them to be doing right now to, push their career forward, if that makes sense?
Yeah, man. I'm going to throw a lot at you right now.
Do it. Yes, please.
Yeah. So as far as like drumming wise goes, I can't speak for every musician, but as far as drumming wise goes, like, I wish I had started playing to a click way earlier in life. So if you're a drummer, get really familiar with the click track and learn how to do it live. Just play to it live, no matter what size of the venue, how many people are there, just fucking do it. Like, it makes you sound better. It makes the whole band sound better. And you're going to have to do it eventually one day. And I'm a stickler about it. Like, I've brought it up plenty of times, but if you're a drummer and you really want to get noticed, learn how to really lay into your drums. So dynamics are obviously a big thing, and I can't go into an Afro-Cuban gig and just start smashing on a kit as hard as I can. But for, like, if you're trying to get into a band within the scene, like a rock gig, basically, a rock band or a pop punk band or even a pop band, learn how to just beat the shit out of your drums and be able to maintain it. Because that is what got me my gig with Crooked Teeth. It's what got me my gig with Strife. It's what allowed me to fill in for Backtrack. And it was one of the main things that caught people's ears when I just auditioned for that last band, is they want a drummer that they can hear and feel and see live. And nothing looks cooler than a drummer just wailing on a drum set, John Bonham style. It's one of the coolest things that a rock drummer can do. And don't be afraid to be emotional live. Don't be afraid to leave it all on the kit, because you see a lot of drummers that get up there and just try and look like a cool guy, and they sound cool, but there's just something missing from the set. Whereas that spazzy drummer can really just leave it all out there, and a lot of people will go, fuck, that was really cool. As far as getting more gigs goes, being a person, whether you're in a band or not, or if you want to start filling in for more people, just fucking network. Just go to every show you can and take every single gig you can. Like, I've filled in for quite a few local bands, but that's what allowed me to be able to get an audition with Strife. And once I got an audition with Strife, we were in Europe, and one of my favorite bands as well, Backtrack, didn't have a drummer at the time. And Ricky walked up and was like, hey, like, if you have nothing going on, we need a drummer for this tour starting when we get home. So just like that, I secured a gig for myself because I was willing to drop everything and go, okay, I'm going to do it. You have to be willing to, if you want to make it your career, you have to be willing to go, fuck it, like, let's do it. Like,
yeah,
with crooked teeth, there's been times where I know we're not going to get paid. Like, I know we're not going to make crazy money, but we need to go out there and advance our band's name. So we're saying, fuck it, we're going to go out there and do it. That's the big thing I would give to any young musician is whore yourself out. Just play as much as you can with every band that you can, because at the very least everybody will look at you and go, oh fuck, that's that dude that plays for like every band. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And there's like this validity that comes with that. You're absolutely right. There's something cool about going to a show and looking up on stage and seeing that energy that each musician brings, and the drummers specifically. Everyone notices that guy who's just having fun on the kit.
Yep.
But B, if everyone starts talking about themselves like, oh, doesn't that guy also play for so and so and that other band and that other band? It just shows how much of a pro you really are, and it adds value to your name. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's the main thing I would say to any young musician, whether it's drums or not. I mean, drums, it's easier because everybody needs a good drummer. So if you're a good drummer, you'll be able to find work. But as far as being a musician goes, just take every gig you can. Like, just play your ass off. And plus, it's fun, too. It's fun to always have something booked.
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Well, wise words from you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to actually come and talk to me, man. I feel very refreshed and inspired because I love learning about new music scenes. I didn't know anything about the hardcore scene prior to our conversation. Now I know so much. Now I feel like I can actually have a conversation with someone about it. And I thank you for sharing your knowledge with me today, man. I loved it. Absolutely loved it, man.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for letting me talk your ear off.
I hope you're enjoying my Rude Records Marathon. I'm definitely enjoying it. And I urge you to please stick around because I have more interviews, more artists coming from Rude Records over the next couple of weeks. And I'm excited to share their inspirational story with you to hopefully inspire you to continue doing your thing. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, if you enjoyed this conversation, please consider subscribing because I do this every week. I bring on the coolest people on the show to hopefully inspire you to continue doing your thing. So definitely stick around because I've got lots of great content coming your way.